Hello friends, my name is Leigh and I create videos about photography as an art and as a lifestyle. Something about my lifestyle is that I don't love sitting or standing at my computer. So for editing, I take the quickest route possible 99% of the time. I'm also not a huge fan of images that really look like they were edited. I prefer a natural look. Today, we will look at how I edited wildlife images from my time with the new and improved OM system 100 to 400 millimeter f5 to 6.3 lens on the OM1 Mark II. I shared a video about my time with that setup last week. I will link to that in the description of this video if you want to check it out. And because a number of you wanted to see how I edited those images and also what the noise situation is in the images, let's discuss, and I will share some of my editing. And please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I've got 3 levels of editing we'll do today. The first is very simple. The second is a little bit more work, and then the third is the most work I did on these images. We're looking at most of the editing in Lightroom Classic, though I will be adding in one extra step for a couple of the images. I used Lightroom because I was in a hurry. I didn't have the lens for a very long time prior to launch, and I wanted to get my video up. And I'm the quickest in Lightroom because I've just been using it the longest. I do have other software that I use for specific purposes or just when I have a little extra time. Anyway, the images were all captured in RAW, so we do have the greatest amount of editing freedom. Let's dive in. Number 1, ouch. This is an underexposed image. The Roadrunner had been in the sun and I had dialed in some negative exposure compensation, but then he quickly ran past me, as Roadrunners do, and I grabbed this shot without changing settings because I didn't have time. Never fear though, we can brighten this up. Now, normally I would go right to the exposure slider and start there. However, I don't know what compelled me to try this, but I clicked the auto button for the very first time. And this is what I got. Are you kidding me? This is ridiculously close to what I would want the end result to be. I did want to brighten exposure a bit, but that's it. I was astounded. Have you used the auto button? Like I said, I had not, and I had no idea how valuable it would end up being for me. I used it on every photo in this series, and I made slight adjustments from there. Now, I did sometimes think the adjustments were a little bit much after hitting the auto button in terms of like contrast or saturation, so sometimes I backed those out a little bit. But photos with those bright colors and lots of contrast are always the most popular on Instagram or in YouTube videos, so this is a tool that I will absolutely use in the future when I want this kind of look. Photo number 2 is this tiny common squirrel monkey. He's so very cute. The photo actually looks quite good right out of the camera, but let's hit auto again. I again want to brighten exposure a little to make monkey a little bit brighter. And this is a situation where I thought the saturation was a little bit much, but only in the orangey yellow of his arms. So I reduced saturation in the oranges and yellows. One more thing to point out here was that this photo was captured at ISO 2500 because this area was in the shade. This photo makes it look sunny, but it wasn't. So we can see a little bit of grain in the background here. I don't find it objectionable, and really, I wouldn't have noticed it if a few viewers hadn't asked me about how much noise I was seeing in my OM system camera images, which made me really examine them. This is a good time to pause and talk about noise or grain for a minute. Sometimes I do want to add some noise reduction to images captured with any camera, but my goal in photography isn't to create the most sterile image with no grain, with every detail brought out of the highlights and the shadows, with colors intensified beyond what you actually see with your eyes. Rather, I want to create my art, which is more natural, that might evoke a feeling or put you into the environment. So in the case of the squirrel monkey here, I didn't notice that there was any noise because all of my focus was on the monkey. I chose the photo here where he was looking right at me. This was a series of photos where I can kind of see both of his eyes, kind of like I'm in the tree with him. It didn't even cross my mind to add noise reduction here because it didn't detract from the image. And that being said, let's do some noise reduction on a couple more images. I was told by someone at OM System that he was really impressed with DxO's noise reduction, and I just happen to have the latest DxO software, so for the next couple of images, we'll use it. Adding the two photos here in DxO PureRAW 4, I want it to apply any camera and lens profiles it has along with noise reduction, and because I asked it to, I sent the images over to Lightroom Classic. Let's start with this handsome little finch. Again, you guessed it, the auto button, which led me to a photo that was a little too saturated for me, so I backed that off a little. But now you can see how smooth the background is. This was captured at ISO 3200. Let's flip over to the original photo, hit the auto button again, and you can see that the noise in the background is a little bit distracting. I have this nice shallow depth of field with the Ocotillo fence fading out of focus, which helps the bird be the center of the viewer's attention. But that grain over his head is bugging me. So that's why, hopping back over to the image processed first in PureRAW, the smooth background allows the bird to be the center of attention. All right, now I want to jump to the most editing that I typically do with a wildlife image on this beautiful mountain lion hanging out in the shade in this cave-like area. Let's talk through it. I did the noise reduction because looking at the original image, you can see noise in the background because this image was captured at ISO 5000. Like I said, the mountain lion was in shadow. In the case of this photo, I don't really like the background. From experience, I knew that the noise back there would only intensify how the mountain lion is kind of blending in once I was editing the image. Where I liked the foliage around the monkey that we saw earlier, I don't want that same kind of look here. I really like the way the mountain lion is looking straight at me with its intense gaze. That is what I want the viewer to see. So to our noise reduced image, we're going to, why not, hit the auto button. And wow, that did absolute wonders for this image. Again, the oranges are a little saturated for my liking, so I'm going to use the color mixer to reduce those. And now we have an image that came alive, but it still doesn't quite meet my vision of having that powerful mountain lion challenging the viewer with its gaze. So using noise reduction definitely helped to smooth out the background and push it away from our attention. But in order to isolate this guy further, I'm going to use some masking. Again, I absolutely rely on the smarts of my software whenever I can, and choosing subject masking worked perfectly. I am going to do two things here. One, I want to brighten Mr. or Ms. Lion here just a tiny bit, but then I'm going to duplicate and invert the mask so the background is selected. From here, I can darken it just a little to help push it back away from our attention and bring the brighter subject forward towards our attention. This still looks completely natural, but the image is now conveying how I felt in front of this guy when he was demanding my attention. And that's it. Simple as that. I know a lot of folks really enjoy diving into editing their images, going into Photoshop and using layers and really digging in, and that's cool. But as I've gotten busier and as image editing software has gotten smarter and smarter, I am relying on those smarts more and more. I absolutely love that I can press one or two buttons and have the software take care of the noise while retaining detail. Press another few buttons and slide a slider a little bit, and 30 seconds later have a fully edited photo that meets my vision. This was the first time that I used the auto button in Lightroom, but I definitely want to explore it more with different types of photos and also see if there are similar options in other editing applications that I just haven't noticed yet. In fact, you'll see photos edited with DxO PhotoLab 8 and the NIC filters soon. Raymond and I have a date to edit the images from our Chicago trip together, and I plan to use those. It's mostly street photography, and I do plan to use the NIC Silver Effects filters. Like you saw with PureRAW 4, you can use the Nik filters with Lightroom. It's so neat that you are able to build the editing workflow that works best for you from all of these different parts. If you want to see some of those Chicago edits in a video where I'm editing through them, let me know in the comments. I would also like to see what your photo editing process looks like. What software do you use? How much do you rely on these very smart options that are available? Remember to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again to OM System for the loaner gear. Thanks to DxO for the software downloads. And thank you for watching.